Characteristic number 6 is the stimulus response characteristic, I guess. This one can be kind of confusing. This one might seem like maybe it's not true for all living organisms. There are some examples of the stimulus response reflex that are very obvious to us. So, let's say you notice an object flying towards your face. Maybe somebody's throwing a baseball and then, it went in the wrong direction and it's heading towards your head, and you startle or you blink or you move quickly out of the way. That's a response to a stimulus. You're responding to the stimulus to try to literally survive. It's a survival mechanism. Okay, so the human blink reflex, if somebody claps their hand or there's a loud noise near you, you reflexively close your eyes in order to protect them. That kind of makes sense. It's logical and it's easy to understand. But there are maybe other creatures, other organisms, like, for example, plants, where maybe we don't necessarily obviously see any kind of stimulus response. If I go up to a tree and I clap my hands, it doesn't jump, it doesn't blink, it doesn't seem to do anything. So does this characteristic actually apply to all living organisms, or doesn't it? And the answer is it does, or it wouldn't be listed here. Let me give you some examples of where plants and other creatures that maybe we think are too primitive to have a stimulus response actually do exhibit this. So the very first one we're going to talk about would be the concept of phototropism. So the word photo, you might know already, means light. So you might think, oh no, photo means picture. Well, a photograph is a picture taken with light. So photo means light. Tropism means just like bending or something like that towards, or growing towards the light. So phototropism means the plants can grow towards the light, which is something that you're actually familiar with already, and I have a little video I'm going to show you. Let's check this out. Notice the light now is on the left side, it's over here. All the seeds are growing to the left. Now they switch the light and they put it on the right side over here. And then the plants are starting to bend or grow into the other direction. And that just keeps going, so I'm going to stop it here. Alright, so that's phototropism, bending or growing towards light. Plants responding to a stimulus. It's a little bit slower than what we're used to, but certainly it happens. Okay, well, you might say, well, do plants do anything fast? And the answer is yes, and that's called thigmonasty, or some people pronounce it thigmonasty, which is kind of a strange word. That means it's a very rapid movement that a plant might engage in thanks to some kind of a stimulus like touch. So let's take a look at this example over here.
This is because the stem of this plant has strong receptors in it. Actually, all animals and plants has receptors in their body that respond to touch, but this touch me not plant is more sensitive from others. So that's why this plant is also called as sensitive.
Not sure what this drawing is, but somehow that shows the plant going to sleep or something. So that plant is called a mimosa, or some people call it touch-me-not, and when you touch the leaves of it, like she's doing here, they very, very quickly close up.
Actually, all animals and plants has receptors in their body that respond to touch.
That's really quite impressive. Think about why maybe you think, why do you think the plant does that? How does it help the plant to close up like that? Think that through for a minute, maybe we'll discuss that later. Another example of a very fast thigmonasty kind of movement in a plant is this one. All right, so clearly that's a Venus flytrap, which I'm sure you're familiar with. the person that was making that video purposely put a fly in there, and when a little hair trigger was touched at the base of that trap, it closed very quickly. And the Venus flytraps do this to, get a little extra nutrients, basically. So they're plants that engage in photosynthesis and all that stuff, but they also have, this mechanism that allows them to get a little bit extra nutrients because maybe their roots don't have a supply of rich nutrients in the soil. All right, another example of a stimulus response in an organism where maybe we would think that kind of thing doesn't happen. All right, there's some other examples of both primitive organisms and complex, animals engaging in this, and that's called chemotaxis, which is a response to a chemical. So let's say you put a rotten apple over here, and you have some fruit flies flying around over here. Those fruit flies can sense basically the chemicals in the air, the smell of the apple over here, and they will start flying in this direction. They'll fly to the apple, and the reason for that is pretty obvious, because it's a food source. It's a food source for them, and they're going to lay their eggs in there, and little larvae will grow in there, and then hopefully nobody takes a bite of it, because that would be disgusting. An example of chemotaxis, moving towards or away from a chemical. The opposite could be true, where if the chemical is something toxic, for example, like bleach, if there's some bleach over here spilled or whatever, the organism might move away from it because it might be harmful and it might be, unpleasant to it. And here's another one, another type of stimulus response that might happen in primitive organisms, but also in advanced ones, and that's phototaxis. Once again, photo means what? Did you say light? That's correct. And taxis means movement, like a taxi moves you. A taxi is something that moves you places, so taxis or taxis refers to movement. This is movement to or away from light. So some creatures like the light and move to it, and that's the video I'm going to show you real quick. Right here. This is a little Daphnia shrimp that live in freshwater, moving towards the light at the, we got sound effects here, at the top of the aquarium. Somebody put a light source up there, and you might wonder, well, why would they move to the light? How does that help them? These guys eat algae, so think about where you might find the most algae. I think the answer is then pretty obvious. All right, an example of a creature that might move away from light. Ooh, my sun is blue. Why did it go blue? I don't know. So if you have a pond over here, and you have an amoeba at the bottom of the pond, a little single-celled organism, they don't really like the light. They will move away from the light. Maybe they'll go underneath a rock or something like that, where it's dark. Or closer to the bottom of the pond, they'll go down. And the reason for that is because a lot of the food that they eat is dead, decaying animals that might sit on the bottom of the pond, so their food is away from the light. So for them, it's better to move away. For the Daphnia shrimp, kind of a funny name, Daphnia shrimp move to the light, so they have positive phototropism. The amoeba would have negative phototropism, meaning it moves away from the light. Positive means moving to the light.